What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, continuing my deep dive into Neil Young's studio catalog, and today I'm going to talk about his 31st official studio release, 2009's Fork in the Road. I'm going to talk about this, I'm not going to play any music from it, then I'm going to rank the songs, then I'm going to rank this album among all the other albums I've already done. Fork in the Road. This is a fun album. I think this is maybe the third in the trio of really good recent post-late career, early 21st century Neil Young albums. Living with War, the sort of very anti-George Bush protest album that was a lot of fun. Chrome Dreams, which I think is the best thing he's done since the 90s. And then we get Fork in the Road, which is lyrically an interesting album, conceptually kind of an interesting album, musically just a super fun album with some super fun songs. Reminds me a lot of Reactor. If you're a fan of Reactor, you're a fan of sort of grooves, Neil going into the studio, finding a good groove, jamming out, like maybe saying, hey, let's stick with this, I'll throw some lyrics on top, that'll be our song. That seems to be the approach to a lot of the songs on this album. The band that he's playing with, we have Ben Keith is here, Rosas is on bass. They were both on Chrome Dreams. Chris Cromwell's on drums. And then Anthony Crawford is playing a lot of different instruments and adding a lot of flavor to a lot of these songs. But musically, a lot of these songs kind of are in that Crazy Horse vein musically. Maybe somewhere if Crazy Horse is like the T-Rex of Neil's sort of electrified, punky, grungy attack. And Mirrorball, which I think is another significant album as far as Neil and his like aggressive sounds go. If Pearl Jam is like the Velociraptor, a little sleeker, a little more fleet-footed in the musical attack, this band is kind of somewhere in between. Just definitely not as light of foot as maybe some of the really good Pearl Jam stuff on Mirrorball. Definitely not as just lumberous and threatening and devastating as Crazy Horse at their best, but it's kind of somewhere in between. A carnivore of the dinosaur age who's just not as deadly as the Velociraptor or as ferocious as T-Rex. I don't know my dinosaurs, despite teaching kindergarten. So many have been added since the Jurassic Park movies have come out. I'm lost, but I'm sure there's a dinosaur that fits this description. And so musically, it's just really fun. I don't think he's doing anything particularly new. There's some really nice, good sort of grungy vibes on here. There's some really nice just twist the guitar and strangle it to death while I try to squeeze out a solo type attacks on here. There's a beautiful acoustic song on here. So musically, it's a win. Lyrically, it's a really interesting album. It was inspired by his own car, a Lincoln Continental, which he was having converted into an electric vehicle. And so this is pretty much a love letter to his car, Omaha, Nebraska, Wichita, Kansas, where it was made, electric vehicles, complaints about traffic. Yeah, I think those pop up a couple times. A really cool song about just being on the road. That's kind of metaphorical, but it's just really nice, sort of hypnotic, drive all night type song. There's some ZZ Top, some of the music in here, some of the attack kind of sounds like ZZ Top, gives me a ZZ Top vibe. At times like a late 80s, early 90s, that heavily processed sound that they were toying with for a while when they just I don't know, the 80s ruined their sound. So lyrically, it's kind of rough, though. I mean, there's literally just one of the songs is pretty much sounds like a commercial, like an ad man for an EV vehicle was like, all right, man, let's have Neil sing this. We'll put it in a commercial. Maybe they should have. It kind of works. I mean, the first time I heard it, I was just like, wow, okay, bunch of songs about cars. And then the more I listen to it, the more I get to the point where we are now, where like, here in this country, there's still this really hard pushback against EV vehicles. There's really just this, we were making progress as far as having charging stations, and now we're kind of going backwards. One of the people who, was leading the charge on EV vehicles is pretty much public enemy number one for a good portion of this country. So it almost has this like value now more so than it did back then, where it's like, oh, good, somebody's singing about this stuff. It's maybe not the most poetic or most it's a little maybe too just blunt force trauma to the head to get the point across, but I don't know. It's not bad. It's just sometimes cringy. Um, what else? That's about it. There's a loose jammy vibe to a lot of these songs where it's like, hey, I have an idea. Let's develop it. I'll throw some lyrics on here. Reminds me of Reactor in that way. Just a lot of really good grooves. And it's just a super fun album. It's a super fun album. 10 songs on here. Opens up with When Worlds Collide, which just has this sort of fun, pseudo crazy horse, kind of jagged, kind of clunky rocker. It's a traveling song, but as you travel, sort of the things you're encountering across the world, are maybe colliding with the other, values are clashing. This very much sounds like a Canadian psych fan who also loves ZZ Top and wants to make their own album. Yeah, it's a really cool musical vibe. The next song, Fuel Line, a little more tightly wound. This weird guitar riff that's, I think it's like processed or it's like way back in the mix, but also reminds me, not so musically as much as sonically, of like that late 80s, early 90s ZZ Top type stuff. And the overall vibe of this, the way he's just kind of complaining about gas prices and just kind of going on and on about the state of the world, reminds me of like the Don Henley Dirty Laundry template, where it's just this groove, and then Don comes in and just talks about broadcast news, and Neil just kind of comes in and talks about gas prices and the importance of an EV vehicle. Just a way more frantic version of Dirty Laundry. Next, what I think is the best song on here is Just Singing a Song. Just Singing a Song Won't Change the World. Kind of a anti-protest song, or anti-protest song. A self-referential protest song. Am I wasting my time in writing a protest song? Some really nice guitar grunginess on this. Just your big plotting crazy horse vibe. Really nice and aggressive with these sort of angelic high backing vocals. I think Peggy Young does the backing vocals on this. Just that contrast really well with the music. I think it's the highlight of the album. In many ways, it's sort of the heart of the album, a protest song, calling out protest songs on an album that's, encouraging people to move towards this new alternative energy. Kind of a fascinating song. Not something like Crackers, What the World Needs Now is another, whatever that song is, which was a lot more just, disillusioned. There's some weird hope in this song, but at the same time not. Interesting song. Johnny Magic comes next, which is about Wichita, Kansas, the home of the Continental. I think those are actual lyrics from this. Kind of has a nostalgic rocker vibe. It's complaining about how we lived in a better time when it came to industry back in the day. We were making these cars. Now we're losing jobs. Now the economy's tanked. And there's this interesting thing where the background vocals are saying, Johnny Magic, Johnny Magic, very reminiscent of Johnny Rotten. Johnny Rotten. Had to be purposeful. No way Neil wasn't listening to this in production going, oh, that sounds exactly like Johnny Rotten. So, does not have the power of that original song, but it's a nice callback. Cough Up the Bucks might be the weirdest song on here. Almost has this Rage Against the Machine energy, because I think Neil keeps going, or somebody keeps going, cough up the Bucks, cough up the Bucks. Cough up the Bucks, cough up the Bucks. Like, I just expect Zach De La Rocha to come in and just like start dropping bars, and Morello to come like shredding. It's a very interesting song, some interesting musical moments, kind of clunky, mid-tempo, scrappy rock. It kind of works and it kind of doesn't, but there's so much thrown in the mix that by the end of it, you're like, yeah, whatever that was, that works perfectly. A weird but cool song with some cool jamming energy in there. Get Behind the Wheel is like a grungy 50s pseudo rockabilly type thing. Very early, like this album reminds me very much of 80s Neil. And some of these things I think probably could have fit on a much better version of Everybody's Rockin'. But this decade is very all over the map in that way. And some of these songs remind me of that album from the 80s. Interesting connection to that, I think. Off the Road, we finally get like a slow song. It's like this really slow, like electric ballad. And it's a kind of about being in traffic. And the vibe is sort of like late night driving. You also get this, you can never take your eyes off the road. Very hypnotic, but in a fighting to stay awake type sense, because you're just can never take your Eyes Off the Road. It's kind of a sleepy, kind of almost kind of depressing type song. Um, yeah, yeah. So, anyways, it's perfectly sequenced. It goes exactly where it needs to go on this album. Um, but yeah, it works really well. But it has this like for a song that's celebrating a car, it does have this sort of driving, the monotony of driving, and just sort of the depressing aspect of just being stuck on a highway in traffic. It sucks. We live about way too far from Oklahoma City, but we go up to Oklahoma City from San Antonio for Thanksgiving every so often. That's where my wife's family is. And one time we came back and there was literally traffic for like the entire 9 hour trip because it's I-35, like a main corridor here in the States. Is the longest day of my life. It was absolutely horrible. That I felt this song. I lived this song. I just wanted to get off the road and just live in a pond somewhere. Hit the Road starts off with this drive-by truckers type southern rock intro. Just saw the drive-by truckers last night. Has this almost like Ronnie and Neil type dun 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 dun, dun type riff. Really cool reference to being stuck in traffic on this song. Really scrappy solo. Just absolutely works incredibly well. Then we get Light a Candle, which is an acoustic ballad. Absolutely different vibe than the rest of this album. Nice pedal steel. It's like a country folk song. Absolutely beautiful. And it really stands out from the rest of the album and almost feels like the electric. I mean, yes, he's advocating for electric cars, but the fact is here in the States, they're not popular. And it almost seems when you get to Light a Candle that all of these other songs are like the pollution, the noise, the traffic, the asphalt, the heat that comes off roads. It's all the negative energy that a car brings to society. Where this Light a Candle, which is for the most part an acoustic song, it just feels so much airier. Feels like you're in the middle of nowhere, like you had to park your car like down a path and like you've walked 3 miles to the middle where like you can't hear traffic or even see a road. Like there is this sense of like freedom in here. And maybe that's Neil's sort of like, hey, if we all went electric, a lot of these problems, not all of them, a lot of them are still going to be there, but at least the smog and maybe the noise and some of those things will go away. So it really, I don't know, it's a powerful song and it hits at exactly the perfect time towards the end of the album where you're just saturated with this guitar noise and this electricity for 40 minutes, and then you get this little nugget that's like I can breathe again. Really cool. And then the last song is Fork in the Road, which is a very jammy, loose jam. It just feels like a groove. Neil's spitting out like couplets, kind of a country tinged retro rock type thing. Really nice sort of scrappy solo towards the end. It feels like one of those one take songs. Hey, I got an idea. Let's record it. Bam, we're done. But it's a fun album. Like, I don't know what else to say about it other than the fact that it's about his car. It's about electric vehicles. A lot of complaints about just car ownership in general as it presently exists in the States. Complaints about traffic and gas prices. And musically, not doing anything new, not doing anything particularly different. No wheels, ironically, are reinvented, or unironically. Nope. It's just a fun album in which the stakes feel like maybe they should be high because we're dealing with, what is essentially an environmental issue. But they don't feel that way for some reason. I don't know, just because I guess this album wasn't really taken seriously as any sort of statement. The lyrics feel clunky at times. They feel like, oh, I can write an album about my car. Let's do that. The power that Neil had at this point in his career where he could just do this and people would buy it and they would love it and they would listen to it. But it's a good album. I really enjoy listening to this. If I had to rank the songs on here from my favorite to my least favorite, that is what they look like. I do think that just singing the song, just both lyrically, musically, it's the best thing on here. And that Light a Candle just coming in, perfect song at the perfect time. Right there at number 5, that Off the Road at number 6. And those ones at the bottom, like Fuel Line, Fork, Johnny, Get Behind, those have the more traditional, like sort of retro, almost 50s type vibe to them, kind of an early rock vibe that I just don't think is as interesting as those top 4 songs. But yeah, I mean, they're all. I don't think any of them are bad by any stretch of the imagination. None of them are cringeworthy. Though some of the lyrics are a little like, oh, okay, that sounds like a commercial, Neil. If I had to rank the album, it's not in the top 20. So After the Gold Rush is still safe at 10, and Trans is still in the top 20. I don't know why, but I really hope it stays there. So I have it down at number 23. Behind a Reactor, which I think it sounds a lot like. Right behind Dead Man Soundtrack, which is such a unique listening experience. But above Prairie Wind, above Greendale, above his other stuff from this era. Mainly because it's fun. I think it's just a really, really fun listen. So yeah, 23. That sounds about right. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this album. If you check it out for the first time, if you revisit it for, comments have been great on this Neil series. And there's a couple of people in the comments on this journey with me. So love hearing about your stories. Love hearing your thoughts on these albums. But yeah, that's all I got for now. That's Neil, Fork in the Road. My thoughts. Thanks for watching. There's thunder outside. Peace. Talk to you later.